Welcome back to the Wolverine.com podcast, our video edition. I'm John Borton. We're here with Tom Crawford, and Tom Crawford has been carefully monitoring all things Michigan sports like he always does from his perch in East Lansing, Michigan. Some things get him a little bit fired up. I know that our number one topic today certainly has over the past few weeks. Tom Crawford, we enjoyed and Michigan enjoyed its breakthrough season, its Big Ten championship, and then that all that aura of great feeling sort of disappeared in a big hurry these last few weeks, culminating in the fact that your head coach isn't around for signing day and maybe just one nod away from becoming the Minnesota Vikings head coach. But that did not happen. He is supposedly back. He's told Michigan this is not going to be a regularly occurring thing. So, first of all, welcome back to the podcast. Second of all, your thoughts on the matter.
Okay, I got a blank canvas here. I'm going to roll. Hey, so I'm going to use the MIS theme since you live relatively close to MIS, Michigan International Speedway. After all that great season in 2022, we had a spin out on turn 3. And the driver of the car was Jim Harbaugh. And Anthony mentioned this in our dialogue before and with you. And it's like, good thing we didn't do this podcast last night or even yesterday morning, because I was disheveled and just fatigued with Jim Harbaugh. And I still am. And I'm still, I'm a Michigan man. I'm an alumnus. I'm a diehard fan. I'm fan media, and I care about the Michigan football and basketball programs, all the athletic programs, as much as anybody. But I was in a funk yesterday, and I just thought everything that was accomplished in this past season, in particular with Jim Harbaugh, totally lost his credibility and trust, if you will. Let's use the word trust. There was mistrust, and there still is in my mind.
So the question then becomes, how do you regain that trust? How do you walk back into Schembechler Hall and say, hey guys, I'm all in. I'm here. I'm ready to go. I'm fired up about the 2022 Michigan season. We're going to get a defensive coordinator in here and build something and repeat what we did and all of that and sell it in such a way that you have the level of buy-in that you had this past season. Where are your Aiden Hudson's coming from? Where are your where's the staff synergy after this sort of thing? What needs to take place for all of that to happen?
Well, let me start out first with the jilted wife, Warden Manuel. And I would drop a nice little prenup, if you will, to use a marriage agreement a situation. I would make that buyout out crazy high. If you're going to do this to us, if you're ever going to leave us, you're going to pay the price. And the other thing is, if I'm Warden Manuel, I would take that so-called offer off his desk and do a little reworking, if you would, and make sure that there's any other flirtation that you're going to leave this Michigan marriage that you would work for free. You said a few weeks ago, you love it so much. I would just make sure that if there's any flirtation, bye-bye, we're done with you. I mean, and then on the other end with Jim Harbaugh, John, I would come out and do something that I typically don't do, and that's called transparency. I would be transparent with, and most, let me make this statement. Fans, fans, media, alumni, me, all of us, we are irrelevant in contrast to the players, the recruits, the 22 recruits who have signed, the 23 recruits, the parents of players, the coaching staff. Some coaches that just moved there 3-4 weeks ago. There's a couple of situations like that. They're the ones that really matter, as in contrast to us. But I would make sure I'd be transparent with them and say, listen, I had that NFL itch again. I'm done with it. I'm locking in here. My plan is, and I think he said that somewhat to that effect last night, and I saw some correspondence about his conversation with Ward Manuel. But I would make sure that I would almost do a video to do it, to talk to the fan, be transparent, try that concept. Then you'll maybe wiggle your way in to the trust factor and get this whole flirtation behind us.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things, and we can lose sight of, is yeah, I so many people are going to be uh, identifying with what you're saying, the level of frustration, the level of sort of compromised trust. But here's what you've got going for you now coming back. You do have a roster that has been through a Big Ten championship season. You do have the continuity that comes from that return. You do have most of your coaching staff back together. You still have, Mike McDonald, huge loss. But you've got a Mike Elston rejoining or joining this defensive staff. You still have the Mike Harts and the Steve Clinkscales and the Sharon Moores that made the magic happen last year. That's the good thing that comes out of keeping this group together. But there, you're right. There's got to be some repair work done in order to make it the sort of group that you did have last year. And I think it's going to be extremely important that Michigan gets a defensive coordinator, whether from within or without, that is able to really recapture with these players the sort of defense that they put out there last year. It's a lot easier to beat Ohio State when they score 27 than when they score 60. And B, you have all the elements of a great offense for next year, and that has to be taken to a higher level. And you may have to outscore some people, not necessarily early in the year because the schedule sets up for a really good season early on. But I think those are two things that you have to get going in the off season right now and get the buy-in from the players like you did last year.
Well, that schedule sets up for a good record, not necessarily good season, and I'll address that in a second. Yeah, you're right. There is going to be a lot of repair work, and you know what the frustrating thing about this whole thing was this. And I was down at Miami, obviously with a lot of others, in the Orange Bowl, at the Orange Bowl, at yeah, at Kid or at the Rock, whatever the stadium, and not Kid Rock, but whatever the name of the stadium is. But my point is this: I saw optically, statistically, visual, everything, schematically, a cavernous gap between Michigan and the true elite, the Georgia Bulldogs. If we ever even fantasize about winning a national championship, I would think that Jim Harbaugh would have been more committed and like, wow, this is great. We got phase one of our project done. We won the Big Ten title. We beat Ohio State. But man, phase two, we got to get to work on this like right now. Because there is a huge gap between us and them. And maybe your standards are low. Maybe winning the CFP isn't a priority. For me, you want to call it that co-championship 0.5 for the cynics to call it? Yeah, 0.5 since 1948. That Michigan's better than that. Michigan is truly but Michigan deserves better than that. And Michigan deserves better than 3-4 against Michigan State. That's embarrassing. I mean, Michigan State those were not very good teams in those 7 years. Realistically, there was a couple ones, 15 team was decent. But 3-4, and you're 0-2 against Mel Tucker, and you're ready to leave the building in that particular status. This is why I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was disheveled, as I said.
Well, I'm thinking that a flirtation with the NFL could signal the fact that it might be an admission that maybe Michigan's not going to, excuse me, be able to hang with the semi-pro teams of college football. And then you're looking at this regional action where you try to challenge for the Big Ten every year, and you knock off a borderline semi-pro team, which is Ohio State. Certainly a great year for the Wolverines, but unless, and I get right back to it, unless you're all in on NIL and you're using it at a level that the top programs are, you're not going to match them for talent, and you're not going to match them on the field.
But I wish somebody would explain to me, and I'm not being critical of you in making that statement, but I just need to know more about. Someone needs to lay out where Michigan's NIL status is and what the other opponents is. Because when you read stuff, you really don't know what's true or what's not true, and you really can't get a grasp of what this whole NIL thing is. So I'd like to know more about that, more than anything. And one thing I'm let me go back to the staff thing you brought up. That is huge. The staff is kept intact, even with the absence of Mike McDonald, because I know Harbaugh will make. I'm confident he'll make a good hire. But I'm telling you what, they got some great coaches on this staff. Klinksdale is he's going to be he's an up and comer. I tell you what, Ronald Bellamy, in my opinion, is going to be the next Fred Jackson on this staff. People say, well, who's the next Fred Jackson? He is a great recruiter. He is going to be an integral part of that staff. And recruiting is everything or a lot of things and making a great football program. So that's why I was frustrated again, John, is that oh my God, the staff is going to get blown up now. And we're going to go back to we're going to go back to a Brady Hoke, Rich Rod, bad hire potential or whatever. I mean, I was just really frustrated. But hey, that's past us, and let's see how Jim Harbaugh acts moving forward. Once again, with the transparency element that I'm thinking that he really needs to do.
Yeah, and it's weird that all of the sort of the good feeling, the that he built up through these last several weeks seems to have been put on hold, seems to have disappeared. And it's again, it's going to be go out and prove it. Is your heart in it? Is this are you all in? And
Yeah.
does your team reflect that? I'll tell you what, somebody that's been all in for 22 years, shifting gears here, and I have to tell you, I'm a little bit bummed in the wake of the one and only, the great Tom Brady, deciding to hang it up. I can't criticize him for it, but the feeling is, man, you'd just love to see him give it one more year. And but if he did that, we'd want one more year and one more year.
Yeah, I completely understood it. Did not surprise me at all. And I think with the number of 1-year contracts on that Tampa Bay team, he could have set himself up not just for failure, but I mean, in physical harm. I just don't know what was going to, personnel wise, was coming down on Tampa Bay. I'm glad, to be honest with you, John, and I know you're a huge fan. You've been with him through and through since the days you covered him. But I think it's good. I mean, he ended up on it. Every talk about ending on a good note doesn't necessarily have to be another Super Bowl thing where all stuff confetti's coming down, you're hugging your kid and all that stuff. I thought he ended it in a sweet way. That comeback,
Unbelievable.
against the Rams. I mean, his last possession, he took him back. It couldn't have been a better end. Well, it could have been, but I mean, it's pretty good ending. And I just think he's on top of the world. He is a goat of professional sports. There's no question about it. And now he can embrace his family, which he talks about, and it's sincerely. You can just hear it in the tone. So everybody wants to be Tom Brady, and everybody wants to be Tom Brady right now. I think he's on the threshold for some good times ahead.
Yeah, I'd much rather see him going out the way he did with one more comeback. And if you'd have gotten a defensive stop, who knows what's going to happen? One more amazing comeback rather than, he goes into next year and he nicks up a knee and watches most
Yeah,
of the season, or you have
exactly.
a fall off and you have the injuries that you had this year, only it results in closer to a 500 record, and a lot the general feeling like, well, yeah, he probably should have hung it up. And this way, it is you leave them wanting a little bit more. but he's done everything he possibly can do in this sport and will go down as the best quarterback that ever pulled on a jersey.
No, no, no question about that. And, maybe you pass the baton to Matthew Stafford. I don't, the state of Michigan guy for the Lions. Maybe that was appropriate. I don't, it's all good. It's all good. And I'm a little awkward ending. Adam Schefter, leaks it out or whatever, how that came out. But that's fine. All good and onward.
Onward indeed, and onward to basketball. Michigan has won 4 out of 5, but is not generating the sort of confidence that you'd like to see in your basketball team entering February, because they played a 0-10 Nebraska team, at least in the Big Ten, and were getting their ears boxed in for a while and had to have a big second half comeback. That's not inspiring any momentum or any great feeling about this team, especially when it happens on your own court.
No, it was a perfect storm for a flat outing and a lot of right. 9 o'clock start Tuesday night. Storm impending. You got the Huskers, the worst team in the Big Ten, coming in town. Michigan State, or Michigan's coming off a bad loss to Michigan State. Well, I thought the fans that were there, and there was not, I don't know if it was half filled or what, but it was a lot of empty seats. Okay, they were engaged because those fans are locked in, and I thought they helped bring them back. And Hunter was, this is one of those games like when Hunter's in, wow, they're good, they're decent. When he's not in, they're horrible. And when he went out, when he was out those five, he played 5 minutes or so in the first half. I mean, they struggled, and they were down 10, and then they were up 7, and they were back down. I mean, this was like a roller coaster ride, and this was the worst team in the Big Ten. So it was a little alarming to be as descriptive as I can about this team and moving forward. When you look at the daunting task ahead, including playing Purdue 2 times in the span of a few days. So just because of the having to do the makeups. And I mean, you look at the schedule and I think, okay, maybe 9-11. I don't know. Maybe this is just not the year. But I'm telling you what, John, the things that stick out with me that they need to fix is defending ball screens. My God, they are. This took me back to the Minnesota game. Dribble drive penetration. They couldn't stop the ball. And then the perimeter shooting. They had 2 threes in this game. And so when I'm sitting in the game, in this pod, suite with my buds, and I pulled up the 18 roster and saw all those three ball shooters from Jordan Poole, Isaiah Livers, and Mo Wagner could hit threes, and Duncan Robinson. I'm like, wow, think of that team shooting beyond the arc versus this team, which really doesn't have a dependable 3-point shooter. That's what they're going to struggle with trying to make the tournament.
Well, I think we've seen hints of one in recent days in Caleb Houston. I think what he does from here on out is going to be massive. If, in fact, he is starting to get comfortable at this level shooting threes, that can help. Eli Brooks can give you a little bit there. The more guys you have jumping on board there, the better off that rising tide lifts all boats. But I just don't see this team going 500 from this point on, given the Purdue's and the Michigan State and Wisconsin and Ohio States. There are really, you have one maybe softer touch the rest of the way, and that's Rutgers at home. But if Nebraska's giving you all kinds of problems at home, then there are no soft touches.
No, and I think Penn State might be a tall task for. I don't know. I mean, it's like I say this all the time. When they beat somebody, good, they play a good game, you think they're on a roll. And then after the Indiana game, we thought, oh God, okay, there's your defining moment. Well, since that time, they struggled to beat Northwestern, held on to that, and then once again, the second half against anybody has been a struggle. Michigan's only down 4 against Michigan State at the Breslin Center on Saturday. And I go, God, my whole measuring stick was they had to be up by 12 at halftime to have a shot at that game. And we saw what happened in the second half. Something happens to them in the second half. Although against Nebraska, they're such an inferior opponent, they were able to offset that. But we'll see what happens. Stranger things have happened. Maybe the light will go on. Maybe Brandon Johns, he got some minutes, and maybe he's oh, he's ready to move on and be a contributor. They're going to have somebody step up that we're not anticipating stepping up.
Yeah, and I just think it's these second halves are signs of a very young team that has not learned to tough it out for 40 minutes yet, and we're going to find out how well they start to grow in that area. I mean, it's a growth year.
Oh
The
yeah.
problem is you look to the next year and you're going to be operating more likely than not without the best player on your team, Hunter Dickinson. So I think certainly Juwan Howard has his hands full building with this team, not only for the rest of this year, but for the future as well.
Yeah, great recruiting class coming in. Starting with his son, his other son, and I'm. Let me just make this statement. I'm totally bullish on Juwan Howard. That he is all into Michigan, and I sincerely trust him on that commitment and believe in him. And I was one that was skeptical at the hire. You remember that? We just talked about that a couple of weeks ago. And I looked at a video that I did like the day after that. I go, wow, did I was really skeptical in this video. And but I believe in Juwan, and I know he's going to remedy it. He's got a great staff, and I believe in the players, and I think Hunter, got that message in the offseason about his need from the NBA scouts to hit that three. And you're seeing him trying to fire that three. He's going to have to nail that three. Maybe that will stretch some things out and allow Musa Diabate to get involved on the inside, do a high low with the two bigs. I don't know, but something's got to change. And one thing's got to change is second half fatigue and depth has got not to be an issue like it's been in the past.
Yes, no doubt. And just lastly, Juwan Howard, you were listing his characteristics and qualities. One of the best ones at this point for fans of high-profile Michigan sports is the fact that he's not out there flirting with NBA teams. So
Yes.
uh, that
Thank you.
scores you very high at this juncture.
Yeah, I'll take
Tom
it.
Crawford, we're going to keep an eye on all this stuff. We'll see what Jim Harbaugh himself has to say about how he intends to move forward and pull this whole thing back together for another good season. What happens with Michigan basketball and many more items on the docket. Thanks for joining us on this chilly Friday or Thursday in early February.
Always a privilege and an honor, JB, to be on the Wolverine podcast. Until next time.